Testing, testing.
Test 1, test 2.
Here we go.
Here we go. And then I'll edit some of this as well at the beginning.
It's going to make you sound smart. Guarantee it.
I'll put these glasses on because that makes me sound like 15% smarter.
That's it. That's it. Okay. Well, in many ways, Switchboard exists because I found myself on autopilot. After noticing and waking up from a decade-long nap, I realized I still had a family, people who wanted me to work, customers who enjoyed my leadership. It's so easy to be on autopilot. The scary thing, if you don't practice awareness, you may not know it. You may not know that you're even on autopilot. And that was the case for me. So Switchboard is the first way of putting myself into situations where I'm obligated to have awareness for myself and to gain perspective and continually grow. And to flip the coin on that, I've noticed that with my friends, my coworkers. Many of them are in scenarios that's high stakes, require lots of pressure. And I found, hey, they want access to perspective from leaders that want it, but don't feel like they can reach out and grab it. And Switchboard does it for you. The value is perspective, it's reward, engaging in life just a little bit more awareness, a little bit more freedom, and of course a little bit more perspective. So welcome to Switchboard. This is where we explore authentic leadership, creativity, and the power of connection. I'm Josh McDonald, your host, and to kick things off, I'll give a little bit of brief context. There was a guy named Jerry who, before he ended up passing away, he said he leaned in real close, and he's 80s, 90s, and he said, Josh, listen here. And he said, listen to your wife. That's what he said to me. And well, I'll tell you, just kind of like my career, I follow successful women, and I've done okay. I'm listening to my wife. Well, she has some great questions. And so we're going to start the podcast off, and this episode off with a question. So if you were to write a book and put in it everything you learned up to this point, what would the first line be?
You want to go first, Brian, or you want me to?
The first thing that popped in my head was nothing's as serious as you think it is.
Interesting. Mine was your opinion matters, but only if you have one.
Oh, nice.
That's a theme that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I've been having different team members come to me. I'm new in my company. I've returned to a company that I worked at a long time before, and so a lot of people see me as a fresh sounding board, and they ask me all these questions. I said, well, we're paying you for this opinion, so don't feel shy about speaking up about it. Talk about it. That's why we pay you. It's those opinions that matter, and your judgment that matters. It's not to say that you're always right. It's not to say you're always wrong, but your opinion matters. And so if you don't have one, or you don't feel like you can participate in a conversation, then you need to reflect and think about what your opinion should be, or what is your opinion, and come to a table with one. And that's how you can bring value. And that's something that's been rattling around in my head for the last month or two.
Man, I love that. So many people, I think, feel unsafe sharing their opinion. They think they'll be judged for it. They think that they won't be the right one or whatever. So you making a safe space for that is beautiful, man. It's super cool.
Well, and it's the only way you're going to get people's thoughts, because these are people who are smart and they have really good points, and they come to me and I'm like, well, you are right to have these opinions, and you should. And like I said, you may not always be right, but be okay with being wrong with them. Just be okay to have a discussion. So that's been a big key theme that I've seen like in the last couple months.
That's cool. So for mine, nothing as serious as you think it is. I think it's because when you were sitting there just a minute ago talking about like being like in a high stress environment, like a lot of pressure, like to do this thing, it's like The best example I've ever heard was from Alan Watts. And Alan Watts said, I was listening to one of his talks, but he said, picture yourself on like a hill, like looking down. I'm paraphrasing. This is my own, but yeah, looking down like a forest, right? It's beautiful. There's like butterflies, the sun's shining. You're in harmony, right? Maybe you're in heaven. You don't know. Maybe you're not. Like in that moment, you can't tell. You're just like perfection, okay? But if you zoom into the forest and you see the ants are like eating the heads off the beetles right now, it's not really harmonious for that beetle right there getting its head beat off. His head bitten off. But if you say with your mighty human power, you're like, I'm gonna go those MF ants. I'm gonna kill them. I'm gonna protect the beetles. And you do this with your power. Now you look back at the forest. The trees don't have leaves because the beetles didn't have anything to stop them. Now the forest is actually out of harmony and sick because that struggle is part of harmony. And so like, I don't know, like if you zoom out of the earth and you see this like blue and green sphere and we're all struggling, are we not generating harmony? I mean, technology is growing, like our civilization is expanding. From afar, everything looks good, but when you're in it and you're fighting, it's like a feeling of while you're being cut down by the sword, because you're on the losing side, you win because you generate harmony. I don't know, that's kind of... we went out there a little bit, but at the same time, that's why I feel like I think it's very important to realize like nothing is so important that you should have to lose your sense of peace in the world.
Love that.
I mean, that doesn't mean, of course we do at times, we can't help, we're human, but you don't have to. It's not that important.
Yeah. I think my life is a series of awakenings, of waking up and looking around and saying, oh wow, maybe it's something new, maybe it's new perspective, maybe it's maybe it's just waking up for the first time for that particular area of my life. But I hear what you're saying. I think that's really cool.
And I like the reawakening part of it. Like, it's not like you do it once and you're done.
Yeah.
It's like you get to do it again and you realize these things again and again in different ways and a little more depth. And I think that's the process.
Yeah.
Like an engine.
What's interesting is, I think it's interesting as a kid. I don't know if there was a lot of things that taught me how to learn in a way in which I think I've now come to understand learning is in the process of learning. First book I ever read in college was How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler. It's actually a really good book, but it taught me how to read.
Yeah.
I think, in like suit, it would be cool to have a book called How to Learn. And I think there's lots of works actually talking about it right now, and that it requires a lot of failure. And that was something as a kid I didn't realize. I thought you had to get it right the first time. But what I find when I wake up and open my eyes is everybody is having to go through the same learning process, which includes lots of failure. And I almost want to rework the word failure. One of y'all's friends, Saul Yeaton, helped me out with that a little bit, and just reframing what that word failure means in its context, because it has a taboo, I think. Keeps folks from actually engaging.
I don't know if I brought it up last time we chatted, but Adam Grant has a big part in one of his books about failure, and his example is that people who want to be polyglots will go throw themselves into a place where they're speaking that language, and they'll force themselves to say things, and they'll make all kinds of ridiculous mistakes, and they'll get up there and say, I'm a donut, if they're John F. Kennedy, for example, and then they can laugh about it. But he says the reason they do that is because they've recognized that they learn so much faster by learning through their mistakes than through their successes. And I've always thought that that's a really healthy perspective on things. It's like, besides a mistake is past, like can't really do much about that to fix it usually. I mean, you may have to go back and repair something or do something different going forward, but you can't undo a mistake, but you can not make it again.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a pretty valuable concept to think about.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's really neat. Did you have anything further to share on that?
I mean, this could be the topic of the
Right.
whole conversation right here. Is just failure. Yeah, I did. They had a thing over here at CBIC. It's called Entrepreneurs Expresso, and they have it like once a month.
Yeah.
Right, and they have usually a new entrepreneur and an older entrepreneur. And they asked me to come in as an older entrepreneur, but the older entrepreneurs, the newers always do. They always have like an ask, like help me with this problem. The old ones always share a crash and learn. They don't call them crash and burn, crash and learn. And that ties in with what you're saying. Like, oh my gosh, I mean, so many more failures or crash and learns than like successes by far. But man, that's really how you get to the meat of something pretty fast.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, along the way, your view of success changes. The definition of what success. Yeah.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Well,
as I get younger, I feel that very much.
Yeah.
I keep refreshing what's important much more now.
And the crashes help define what success is. Like if I without all the trauma that I've had to go through, I would still be doing something which was not providing joy and happiness, and I'm not doing that anymore. It's like, thank God for the crash and learns, man, because otherwise I'd be on a bad path, or a less optimal path, or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
15 years ago, Pam and I were in New York City. We just got married, and I was like, hey, I want to go get some Lucky Jeans. I just thought, that was the cool brand to me. I was like, if I had some Lucky Jeans, I think I'd really look great. So I'm 246 pounds at this time. And my wife says, Josh, I don't know if you, she was trying to be cautious. We just got married. She's like, I don't know if you need a new pair of jeans. I think you need a lifestyle change. And what's interesting is through a lot of disruption and a lot of learning, like we're just talking about, she kind of got that lifestyle change, 14 years later. And, it's interesting. I used to push pain away. I used to push, anything that would make me feel, like it would mess with, my idea of what I was supposed to be. I would push it away because, that got in the way of this idea, this rigid thought. And now I welcome it. And the reason being is because through all that disruption on the other side, I'm finding, wow. And this is the first line of my book. Life is simpler than your fears. That's what I've come to understand. Life is simpler than your fears because some of my greatest fears have happened, and guess what? I'm still here. And so no longer do I want to push pain away. The reality is I want to welcome it. There's nothing that can change who I am. This is me. If I fail today, guess what? Tomorrow, I'm probably going to succeed early in the morning. Right? And even if I don't, the reality is it takes work. Rome wasn't built in one day. Tons of things that can be said about that. But life is simpler than our fears. And one of the things for me, when we think about play, I want to record what I'm learning. Much of the reason why we're doing this right now is because I want to record your thoughts. I want people to hear them, and I want the perspectives to affect them in a similar way as it affects me. But when we were having initial chats about this, play in the workplace, I was like, what? But the reality is it should be more common than it is, And, I've got this idea in my head of kids on a playground, and then the workplace. And I'm like, why is that not more similar in our head than maybe the stigma is? In fact, I think workplace a lot of times gets the rep of being a dungeon, And the playground is this fun place where kids go and play. But when you get old, you can't do that anymore,
Yeah. There's this children's book, all right? And I think I shared this with you before, but I don't remember. But there's a children's book, and the mama's like washing the dishes, and the little girl's like, Mama, can we play? And she says, after I finish the dishes, sweetheart. And then she's like doing the laundry, and the little girl's like, Mama, can we play? And she says, after I finish the laundry, sweetheart. And then she's sweeping the floor. She says, Mama, can we play? She says, after I finish sweeping the floor, sweetheart. And it goes on, and then the little mom's like, okay, I'm done. What do you want to play? And the little girl says, I want to play wash the dishes. I want to play do the laundry. I want to play sweep the floor. And so the mom goes along with the little girl, and they pretend to do all these chores the little girl wants to do. And I don't know, when you're talking about like play versus work, like when you're doing something that gives you energy and it's not like riddled with like stress and pressure, it can be play and be productive. You know what I mean? Like play doesn't have to be unproductive.
That's really good.
In fact, play is very productive.
Yeah.
And if you don't take time to play, you actually have fewer ideas, you're less creative, and you don't have as much energy. So I think it's kind of essential in its own little way. And I think a lot of people have been accredited with a quote, from Newton to, I think Warren Buffett has been attributed to this quote too, is if you love your job, you'll never work a day of your life. Mm-hmm. It's finding ways to enjoy what you're doing and find the fun in it, and that will give you your energy, and that will be fulfilling. And if you're not in that position, then you need to find a job that you enjoy, so that you can never work a day of your life.
Yeah,
Cool.
with people you enjoy being with too.
Well, and that's a big part of
right?
what makes a job enjoyable. A lot of people don't go to work because they love doing the specific thing that their job is. They love going to work because they like the team, they like the people, they have fun, they joke around, whatever it is.
So one of the ways I do that, and just one of the reasons why that line came out is a song I wrote. I actually wanted to play it for you guys. I think
Did bring your guitar?
anything that makes me feel like a kid again,
Yeah.
it's something I'm interested in. And so like when I thought about play and then decided to commit to it, I was like, oh man, I'm going to do something they're not expecting.
Yeah, you're right.
And it was funny because when I walked in the Common House, they were like, so you're going to go play Bryant a song? And I was like, yeah, isn't that how you make friends?
Yeah, that's how you make friends and influence people. Oh, dude, that's a trip.
Always important to see if it's tuned.
All right.
Feet in the water, hell couldn't be harder, but my feet are cool enough. We just walk slowly through the rocks, and you'll get to the docks unharmed. Oh, I promise you. Well, the creek took hold of me. Well, help me see the way that life could be. Always simpler than our fears, but at the end of our years, what if we all get younger? The older we get, the younger that we'll be. Hold of me. No distractions. Here's my intentions. Not just gonna click subscribe if you're not helping me thrive. If you can't bring me to a place where I'm peaceful, well, then I'll fill my mind with tasteful options. They'll all line up at the auction. The creek took a hold of me. I feel like a kid again. All I wanna do is jump on in. I feel like a kid again. All I wanna do is jump on in. Oh, the creek took a hold of me. Help me see the way that life could be is always simpler than I feel. That's the song.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like it's more the title to your song than your book.
Oh, man.
I like it.
Dude, nice job.
Yeah.
You got all these skills I didn't even know.
Yeah, unexpected serenade.
Well, and here's
Dude,
the thing.
I loved it, man. That was super fun.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. When you can't move out of the cultural norm, when you can't move out and actually feel like you can be authentically you, how is it that we can actually engage each other authentically?
Mm-hmm.
When we're constantly going around putting on a face, you know, and that's why, you know, just to set up, you know, kind of our core discussion here. So preparing for this, there's two things, you know, that come to mind. One is this idea of my kids on a playground, and then us in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is a conversation I had with a guy, you know, I like to bring the spheres of my life together so it doesn't feel like work. It feels like just fun. Oh, like I'm passionate now. You know, hey, I've got this thing I'm obligated to do now. Set up this conversation with the two of you. So I started asking people questions. So I'm on a flight to Dallas for boot camp, current company I'm at. And the guy next to me happens to be American Airlines representative. And so I asked him, hey, what's the role of play in your work? And, you know, the crazy thing, it kind of took him off guard. So he thought about it for a second, then kind of smiled and was like, he said, trust precedes play. Mm. And I started thinking about my kids on the playground. You know, they go out and they're looking at this great big playground, a place designed for fun, but it's not accessible to them always. They've got to, introduce themselves to another kid. Otherwise, there's some form of trust that's starting to be built, even at that age. And I started looking at the workplace, and I was like, well, yeah, I don't think people feel like they can trust. And so that's where I knew, hey, there is definitely a real conversation to be had here that includes not just play in the workplace, like ping pong and stuff, although it does include that. But this idea of trust preceding play. What do you guys think of that, just initially?
I think that is very wise. Because like you're to be at a play with someone means you're going to be authentic with them, right? You're going to let your guard down that you've been talking about, which it absolutely requires trust. And it's funny because I thought we do a lot of play at Seventh Wall in all different ways, but I did not until you had mentioned that thought about the trust involved in that situation. I think it's really wise.
Yeah, I can imagine just walking into a room. Let's say you're a new manager. You walk into a room and you start cracking off jokes with your team. Like, they may not even laugh. That would fall totally dead because they don't know who you are. They don't know where you're coming from. They don't know if you're trying to make a joke or whether you're serious. You know, I think that it's a two-way street. You both have to trust that your team is going to accept you, and that you're going, even if you're not a manager, a new member to a team, you got to trust that they're going to accept you, and that takes learning names, learning a little bit about who they are, and things like that. So absolutely, you can't goof around and play easily with people you just met.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so strange when people approach you in like a subway or a public setting and then just start talking to you and like goofing around or dancing or something like that. That strikes people as very surprising because you don't have that trust yet.
That's an excellent point.
It's also funny when you're in a comedy show, and they say, "Oh, look at this guy right here."
Yeah, that's right.
It's funny for everyone else, but
oh yeah, that always it feels awkward. I'm like,
right?
Oh man, yeah.
So,
well, go ahead.
I'm just thinking about the trust thing. Like, lots of the way we have fun at work has to do. It's because we know the idiosyncrasies and we know the kind of the weird aspects of each other, like really well. Like people, like I'm odd. My team knows how I'm odd. Jamie's like shaking his head, right? Yeah, no, Jamie since middle school. He's also an odd duck, right? But when you know someone well enough to know their oddities, and you can playfully like interact with those oddities in a way that they know it's not an attack. It's because you enjoy how the strange part about this person or some part about their life which is unique or weird. It just generates so much laughter. Like we laugh so often and so much. And plenty of times it's me because of all the tech guys in my company, I'm the least like technically savvy, so I'm likely to break something. So that's like a company-wide joke, and it's always fun. I don't know. You're right. You nailed it. Like without trust, none of that would ever happen.
That's a really interesting point too. For you further brought my mind to that, Jamie. Worth noting on. I mean, the northern culture. I went home to see my wife's family in New Jersey, and boy, it almost seems like every comment. So I sit down, first interaction, right? I mean, I have a hat on, and I'm sitting down at the dinner table, and Aunt Marge comes in, and she says, "Who are you? A Jew?" And here's the thing, like I don't have one way or another, but it's like they were constantly ribbing me about different things, and I was just like, I started to feel a little like, oh, like what's the deal, man? Can they let up, please? And Pam, reminds me later. She's like, Josh, if they didn't like you, they wouldn't talk to you. And the fact that they were joking was their way of like actually building trust, saying, hey, we kind of like you. It was interesting because there was a boyfriend, my wife's sister, came home and didn't say a word to the guy. And so it was really, they were very, very like suit.
And you went up to them and said they didn't talk to you because they hate you. That's pretty much what you had to say.
That's how it felt.
I hate to break it to you, bud.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but yeah, they really hate you.
Yeah.
So.
Anyways, so another picture in my head of just pure play, right? Because as I'm starting to think through this, right, there is an aspect of just sheer innocent play, and there's also the impact of that. How does that then impact work? But pure play, I've got this picture in my head. Went to the skate park with my kids and realized the board that I have is not safe. I should buy them a new skateboard. Mm-hmm. And so we went to the local Apex skate shop, Apex, North Carolina. And I didn't get the board put together. I decided to put it together with them. So we put it together that night. The next day, it's raining out. I mean, it's pouring.
That's exciting.
And I'm like, oh boy, the kids can't go out. And before I knew it, I looked out. They were already out there with their skateboards in the pouring rain.
Like sliding down the road.
And I took this mental note. This is pure play. And so when I think about how that moved me, and then I look at the workplace. How can we create that same environment in the workplace where we all have this almost innocence about us still, to where we can go in? And so I think what we've talked about so far, trust, preceding that play, is definitely huge. All right, well, I want to introduce Bryant is the CEO of Seventh Wall. It's a service-focused company based in Virginia. Bryant is passionate about making fun, joy, and brain breaks. And he says it's core to the workplace, and it's not just perks. He believes that playful, joyful environments fuel innovation and prevent burnout. Do you want to say anything else? I want everybody to know who you are.
I do believe that play is essential. I mean, also there's studies that when you get somebody, you're at your desks for 8 hours a day versus you're at your desk and then you take 10-minute breaks, every hour throughout the day, or 15-minute breaks. Actually more work will get done with less time spent spent working. Like more productivity happens with less time spent working. So as an employer, do you want, I mean, this goes beyond the fact that you actually care about the people that work with you, but even if you only care about productivity, people should not be sitting in front of a computer 8 hours a day. Even if you only give a shit about productivity, not about their family life and their personal life. So that alone, yes, there's not just should there be room to make a fun environment that people want to come back to and they want to tell their friends they should work here. Like we don't have any issues hiring people. Some people, oh man, we can't find people to hire, can't find people. We had like over 100 applicants in a job where some people can't get any. Because the tech guys tell their friends, who tell their friends, like people want to work there. So I mean, the benefits of doing this are not just altruistic. They're also good for business. I think it's good for the world, for people to enjoy what they're doing. There'd probably be a lot. I mean, if Putin like actually liked his life, you think he'd be like trying to make war with people? Like if he like woke up like, man, what a beautiful day. This tea's fantastic. I can't wait to play board games with my son. We'd be like, F Ukraine. Like, no, why would he care? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot less war would happen, a lot less strife if people would just enjoy their life. But it's not trivial.
There's so much there. You know, I mean, you're covering morning rituals, starting the morning with gratitude. I mean, there's lots in one comment that you just made. And a lot of that precedes even the ability to be able to play and to create, even as we'll talk about in a little bit, in the workplace. That's cool.
Thanks, man.
So Jamie Conklin, we've actually talked on a previous conversation. Jamie, how about you introduce yourself to everyone? I want it to be in your words. There's some new things that you're doing, and I want you to be able to clearly state some of those.
Yeah. So I've been in a number of different roles. When early on in my career, I rolled into a director of operations role where I was, growing and scaling up a software company here in town, software and analytics company. And after 11 years there, I decided to branch out, try some new things. And so I took on a VP of operations role at another company and led some of their growth and restructured that business a good bit. And then really found that my passion was in product, building things and thinking about how things are built. So then I moved into a VP of product role at a startup here in town. And I was in this product role and the company got acquired. And now I actually came back to the original software company I worked for. And I'm leading a team there that's working on some innovative new programs for the company. And so it's kind of been a full circle. I get to come back to a company that I helped scale and know a lot about. But now I'm sort of a fresh face and a fresh perspective on it. And I've certainly had my failures in between. And they've really brought a lot of perspective to, my life and how I approach my work. And I think, I see how those opportunities to fail or to not succeed in the way I'd had in the past, color my perspective of what I'm doing now. And so, yeah, it's been a key theme in my, last 6 months since I took this position back again.
So, for years, Jamie has been a dear friend, but also impromptu business coach, life helper, for me, his ability to see clearly how to structure things, which is a skill that I don't necessarily have, but operations and stuff. Jamie's constantly been hey Bryant, what about this thing? Tell me what's going on in your business. I'll tell him I have this amazingly good idea, which I can go back and implement, since that's my role. But yeah, he's helpful to everyone around him.
One of the things you guys, just in introducing yourself, that I caught on is just your superpower of being able to put things in a structure. I'm curious, how do you think that plays a part in play? Because I'll put it in this way. For me, over the last year, I've incorporated quite a bit of rhythms that I'm finding are extremely helpful. It's giving me structure that's enabling me to actually play even more freely, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about, a lot of play has structure. Games have rules, and they're not fun when people cheat. Music has music theory, which is a whole structure of things. And if you understand how chords develop and transition from one to another, then you can make better music. So I think, structure will set you free in many ways. If you do it right in an organization, you'll become unbridled by things like silos and unnecessary complications and bureaucracy. Likewise, if you put the wrong structure in place, you'll be saddled with that stuff.
Yes.
I think what you just said, like structure will set you free, is genius. Really, to forget that is folly. And then to dive too much into it with pure bureaucracy is folly. You reminded me of a weird, let me see if I can even articulate this. There's a concept where, like, if you look at if the inside of the sun or whatever has more structure, but like pure chaos like that, you don't get life. But then if you scoot all the way over to this side, where you have like complete just a frozen block of granite, right? Or a diamond, a pure diamond, there's not like life. But somewhere in between of these two things of like ultimate structure and ultimate chaos is where you get the ability to have like life and growth. And I was reading a book recently where they were talking about that you could have perfect evil, like I forget the name of the book, but where everything is structured in your life, you have to do the same thing, and all the houses are the same on a street, like a plotted out like a groove, and everyone had to wake up at this time and leave. It was like hell. It's like hell. And over here, like the fiery furnace is hell, where it's like pure chaos. There's nothing in between. Is where you find like the most beautiful sort of existence. It's interesting how those things parallel. Ultimate control versus lack of control. You made me think about this with the whole like, how do you have fun? It seems to lock into the similar concept, a balance between the two.
Yeah, I mean, everything has to be somewhere on that spectrum and within the right balance. And some things need more structure than others. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Everything lies in the balance between center of the sun and a block of diamond.
Probably. There's a bit of space there. There's plenty of room to maneuver in there.
Yeah. I like room to maneuver.
I've always said that about you.
So what makes pure play so powerful? That's a rhetorical question at the moment, but we're going to be focusing on it. It's not just about ping pong tables. We've said this at the beginning. Or team outings. I think those help. It's about trust, permission to fail, curiosity, and authenticity. I'm reading through this book called Diary of the CEO. It's also a podcast. It's a guy named Stephen Bartlett out of the UK. And Law 21, he's got all these laws, right? And he kind of put it in this Diary of the CEO. It's things that he's learning. He said you must outfail the competition, he writes in one area. And then he shares a story about Microsoft leader Ronnie Kohavi. In 2004, he talked about the importance of experimentation and failure. So an engineer from Booking.com heard this at this conference, took it to heart, and one of the things I want to point out, look at Bookings.com now, the culture and the success of what they've been able to create. So the essence of pure play, whether at home or at work, I want to connect this dot, is building trust, embracing experimentation, and celebrating learning. So I want to dig into this, Bryant, with you and Jamie. Trust play in the workplace. In kind of preparing for this, I started seeing what other people were commenting on LinkedIn. And we post shorts on LinkedIn, and then we also put the full length on YouTube. But a lady named Raina Fryer asked, how do leaders actively build trust to unlock play? What advice do you have for leaders, Bryant, Jamie, who want to move beyond surface level perks?
That's good. So now no longer theory. Let's talk about real stuff to do.
Yeah.
This is good. This seems like this will be helpful to folks. Well, when we first hire like an employee, or actually when we're in the interview process, when they're getting close, we have them come in and hang out with the team for a day when I'm not there. Because I've met them, they've already gone through an extensive interview process. I've met them, we've talked. We've like, okay, you're one of like 2 people we might hire. They go in and talk with the team. And almost every time they ask the team, they're like, look, so Bryant said these things. They ask, is this like real? Is this true? Almost everyone asks the team if what I said is like real about the workplace. And the one reason we have them come in is to see that it is. So one thing they almost always do is they, at lunch, they sit around our conference table and the staff eats together, and they open up YouTube, and it's logged into my personal YouTube account because I pay for it, so there's no ads. And then what they do with this new hire is they go and they type in like fake stuff for YouTube searches, like how to remove massive amount of hair from your back. Or like, and they do these searches, and they're all laughing because like Brian's gonna find it when he's at home with his girlfriend or whatever. And I do, and I'm at home, and I send the best to the team at like 9 at night. I'm like, you a-holes, because I click, and in my search history, it's like, you know, what is a natural remedy to have a very short penis? Whatever it is. Like this is what I'm gonna look at on YouTube. And so anyhow, they realize that it's an environment that is safe, because when the CEO can be the butt of a joke, and that's okay, then the other people realize, okay, it is okay. I'm not going to get fired for a mistake. You know what I mean? Like I think that is a way to convey very quickly that there's a trusting environment. That's one of many things, but I'll think on some of the other pragmatic things we actually do, or like real things we do.
But I think it plays. It's the same sort of thing. You have to lead by example. So if you want to create an environment that's fun and playful, then you've got to be open and fun. And if you want to create an environment where failure is an option, it's okay to have a failure, you have to be able to talk about your own failures as well as everybody else's. You can't just expect that everybody's going to come tell you everything that they failed at. You've got to say, hey, look, I've failed at this. Here's what I learned. Let's all not make this mistake again. I'm sharing it with you guys so you guys can learn. Because very much the culture of a company, does come down from the leaders and how they manage that company. So if you want to create a fun or innovative culture, or you want to create a culture where it's very experimental, things like that, then you've got to lead and you've got to do that. So that may be like, hey team, I wanted to try reorganizing our meetings so that we do it this way this week. And at the end of the week, you can just let me know whether you like this or like the way we did it before. Or maybe get their investment in it. How would you guys want to do it? So now they're investing in the ideas and the innovation, and they become a part of it. And so then they're even more likely to like it because they're investing with you. And likewise, if you want a bitter or jaded culture, the same advice applies. I mean, you can complain about your customers, you can complain about the bosses and all those things, and you'll end up with a very bitter, jaded team, and probably suffer some pretty high turnover. Which you will never be able to cure until you change. So it's always like, the leadership, their key part of the leadership's role is to emulate the organization that they want. And so focusing on that and leading with that and exemplifying what you want is the easiest way to get there. It's not about the values you put up on the whiteboard. It's about what you show.
Yeah. Well said. Also, to add to that, to tack on to what Jamie just said, which is absolutely critical, would be if you're focused on people working for 8 hours, or you can say, are you at your desk for 8 hours? That's one metric of getting the job done. But a better metric is the work getting accomplished on the due dates it needs to be accomplished? Because then, if somebody who's really efficient can knock the work out and have time to go for a jog or a walk or go to the gym during the middle of the day because that's what's better for their life, great. If somebody's like, look, man, it's a tough day. I'm going to work some more in the evening when I get home. But I mean, having an understanding of what constitutes getting the work done and not harping on sitting in front of your desk in front of a computer for 8 hours exactly is not only is it more human, but it allows for free time for play without judgment, right? Because if you're not in front of your desk, you're not getting judged. No, dude, when do I ever not get the job done? Oh yeah, you always get the job done. Yeah, do whatever you want. Like being able to, like that, adding that with what Jamie talked about gives freedom and trust and leads to play.
So let me take on the role of moderator and ask you a challenge of that, because this is something I debate. My wife has been a nurse for years, and so she works in a very structured environment where she has to be there from 7 a to 7 p. I can think in business, there's customer success, or customer service. They've got to be there to answer the phone calls, so they can't, do their work later because their job is to do it right now.
Yeah.
How do you create that quality for people in those situations? And those are challenging ones.
Okay. No, that's great. So Chris is our dispatcher.
Mm-hmm.
Chris is there from the time we open to the time we close every day. Any call, any walk-in, any email, he's getting that thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if Chris is sick or something, what do? Right? We can't have him at any point. So we have a backup system for Chris where he can hit a button on our call queue, and then it goes. Our team has been trained to be that they can grab dispatch if he's gone or something. But also, if Chris has something he has to do for his home, if he has dental work, if he has to be a human being and he can't be there, he does it. I've been pulling him in some meetings because he's like a great sales guy. People love him. So when I pull him into a meeting, he flips on the call queue for the text to do it. So him having backup allows for him to have some flexibility. But he has the least, of everybody in our company, he probably has the least flexibility. But still, he's also probably one that has that is responsible for more antics and more like fun play stuff than almost anybody else in the company is Chris. He's in the midst of everything. Like he's always in the middle of doing something. Making some joke or prank or, he's helping me plan events we do for staff and stuff like that. Yeah, if he was here to ask him, and he grabs time when he's not busy. Like, he will always be checking the service board and he'll get a ping, but if nothing's happening, he's like in a free spot, he'll do other things. And I don't care what he does.
It's interesting. I don't think you can sustain forever, all the time, every moment of every day. Like, I just love my job, right?
No.
But to a certain level and a certain degree, I think there is some merit to say that work doesn't feel like work when you actually are having fun with what you're doing. And so part of the thing that I'm starting to think through with this conversation, at least for myself, is what do I connect with the job that I'm doing? Is there areas where I'm connecting? Am I having fun? What's the reasons? What's preventing that fun from happening? What's preventing that play from happening? What's preventing me from feeling like, oh man, this doesn't feel like work? And sometimes it's going to feel like work, but I'm really kind of trying to flesh that out a little bit more because I think there's a certain level where, man, and some people you may look at and say, you have no work-life balance. But yet, they're enjoying everything they do. What do you say to the person who actually wants and gets fun and enjoyment out of their work and they work 7 days out of the week? Is that possible?
I have a couple thoughts from that. Well, so one thing is, you mentioned all the instances of play you've mentioned have to do with people being together. They're not remote. People are together in person, right? When one of the guys told me after he got a job, I don't know, this was maybe a year later, and he was like, dude, he was like, thank you for hiring me to be here. Like, dude, thank you for choosing to work here. You're like, this is great. He was like, no, every day, I don't feel like I go to work. I feel like I go to help my friends. So the way he feels about it is he's not going to work, he's going to help his friends, which is work, but that's totally different. I don't have a great desire to go dig a giant hole out in my yard, but if my buddy needs it, oh yeah, I'd go be there in a heartbeat. Let's go dig a hole together. It changes everything because you're now a squad, you're a tribe. So that's one piece of it. The other one is I have another employee, and she will often come in on the weekends, on Saturday and Sunday to be in the office. I'll come in there on the weekends and the music is blaring and she's back there singing.
Yes.
And I'm like, everything okay? She's like, oh yeah, I just had some stuff. I figured I'd knock it out so next week is easy. But she was like, this is my zen area. This is like my peaceful time. It's a lot of energy being able to be alone and recharge in a space which is her space, right? And the shop area is like her space. And she can blast music and sing on the weekends. She can't do it during the week. But if I remove that from her, you're working too much or something, that would detract from her life. So I would never do that. That's what she wants to do. She doesn't feel like she's obligated to do it. She does it because it's fun.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I'm curious to hear what you say, because that's sort of me. Like I'll go home, and this past weekend I was working on trying to get like a little workflow working, and it was like a little bit of coding, a little bit of something else, and just playing around with it. But the few hours that I was able to steal away to do that were fun. That's what I wanted to be doing, and you know, because it gave me a sense of accomplishment. And then the first thing you mentioned, that there's a term for it. It's called esprit de corps. And it's how militaries motivate soldiers to fight. You don't fight for yourself. You don't fight for your country. You fight for your, you know, comrade in arms. Or you fight for each other, and you do it to protect each other and to ensure that they get home safe to their families. And that's one of the most effective ways of motivating, you know, troops. And so, but it's also very effective in all sorts of other settings. You create a goal or an outcome or an adversary. You know, maybe it's your competitor. You know, we got to go beat this company. You know, now you've brought everybody together, and they're trying to help each other do that. That's how you build that sort of strength. So it's
That's interesting.
very well documented, very well thought about.
Yeah, gamifying things, I mean, definitely has worked for me for sure. And I think you're right though with the goal. I mean, I mentioned the fact that I bought my kids a skateboard not put together for the intentional purpose that we could put it together. And that's because when I was a kid, my dad said, "No, I'm not going to go get you a skateboard." And I was like, I'm gonna make a skateboard. And so I found a deck in one area. You know, I went through a trash can in another, and I found trucks, and I found wheels, and I got this thing together, and I went out. All right, we're gonna skateboard now. And guess what? I forgot the bearings. And it was that point that my dad ended up buying me a skateboard. And I was like, "Dad, I need bearings." He's like, "You know what? We're just gonna buy it." But what that
It's because he didn't have any bearings.
Yeah. What that taught me, and even as I reflect back, right, is I wanted to have a skateboard so bad that I wasn't going to take a no and then just say, okay, no skateboard. No, and it didn't feel like work to me. Was that the most efficient way to put a skateboard together? No. Did it end up working in the long run? No. But I could have made it work at some point. It taught me that persistence, right? And having a goal, though, made that fun. I actually enjoyed it. First thing I wanted to do when I got home from school was like tinker around with it a little bit more, you know?
That's cool, man.
Yeah. It's investment. It's the same thing I was saying earlier. You get people to invest in something with you, then they're going to enjoy it more, they're going to partake in it more, they're going to believe in it more.
Yeah, I mean, things I wrote down from what you guys are talking about is modeling it. I mean, another thing that I'm learning just from being a dad, right, is, you know, you got these 3 kids at different ages. They're 4, 6, and 8. They're all turning another year, 5, 7, and 9. And you know, the way I grew up, very rigid, isn't the way Pam and I want to raise our kids. We want to raise them to think and be independent. Already, my oldest daughter is making the best chili I've ever had in my life. You know, and I mean, it's like, you know, I told Pam though, I actually told her, I was like, hey, when we have kids, I'm pretty sure they're going to be self-sufficient, you know, because that's just who she is. She's really, really independent, very, very good at what she does. But what I'm noticing is I can't demand of my kids. I can't just say, just go do it. And even if I want to. If I'm not modeling that in front of them. Now get this. I can look at them and say, go do it, and yell at them, you know, pick them up, put them in their room. But what I'm finding is really working. I mean, it's just not working. But just to be clear, you know. But what is working is, you know, I've noticed in the morning, I've started to sit down and just write again. I just sit and write about what happened the day prior and what's coming up that day. And guess what I'm starting to see? My oldest daughter is sitting down and writing with me. So even modeling some of these simple rhythms, right? I make 4 eggs and a half avocado every morning. That's my breakfast. And it's my breakfast because my coach, Matt Hart, said that's what you need to eat. And I found that that's easier for me, not even have to think about it. Not to have to think about what I'm going to do when I go to the gym, what I'm going to eat. But guess what? Now I'm a breakfast cook. Again, my first job, I was a breakfast cook at Burger Haas in California, Missouri. Not kidding. I woke up at 3 in the morning. Dad drove me there, and I would make all the stuff. I'm returning back to my first
Breakfast cook for your fans.
That's right. I'm making their one next. But yeah, I don't know. I really believe what you guys are saying there with modeling it and that being a means by which, yeah. I wish there was some better answers for nurses though. That there is a lot of reality, Jamie, where Pam feels stuck in where she's at. But I don't know. I think outside of that, it's like the preparation of going to work, and what are you doing before work? What are you doing after work? And one of the cool things about Pam's schedule, she works 3 days one week, she works 2 days the next week. And I would highly recommend that for anybody in healthcare, is to have time off and go have fun.
Yeah.
And that is preparation for some of those times that are unique. And I just want to say thank you to all folks in healthcare. In military, we just came off Memorial Day. There's a reality that when you are in this focused, intentional period of time, you need to also find time where you're not having to be on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that highlights like the way you appreciate being able to have fun is also by not being able to have fun. One way to appreciate a really good relationship is by having a really bad relationship. Like it's hard to take those things for granted when you've had the opposite. I mean, I don't think that nothing is going to be fun all the time. When the shit hits the fan and there's like a big, for us, let's say one of our biggest clients were to get hacked, this is not time to joke around and have fun. This is like all hands on deck. We're going to stay there all night long if we have to fix the client. And I don't think anybody in the company would like bat an eye that we have to do this. This is like an emergency situation. But I think like that having like people that they're every time they work as an emergency situation for whatever reason, I mean, I don't know how you don't get burnt out. And that's probably why jobs that are like that have a very high turnover, because if it's always emergency all the time, there's never let up. Our brains you can't be emergency all the time. You eventually just stop caring.
But, and I think, not to get off on where healthcare has gone wrong, but I do think, in talking to my wife over the years, like the amount of support nurses have had has gone down and the amount of stress has gone up. So they now have, higher patient ratios, they have fewer support staff, and they're expected to do even more because the documentation only grows and never shrinks. And so now they're in this situation where it's always sort of critical. But, earlier, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I'm not saying it was an easy job by any stretch then, but there was a little bit more support and there was a little give and take. And, it allowed them to do things better or develop better relationships with their patients. The other thing you just brought up reminded me of something I was thinking about earlier, which was, you were talking about how do you create a culture of experimentation and things. It's really important to highlight when it is and when it is not a good time to do that. If you want to inspire people to do it, then you've got to set some boundaries. Like, the night that your customer got hacked, not a night for experimentation, not a night for trying anything new. We are going to buckle down and put this back together in a very thoughtful, structured process. But when you're coming up with, hey, we need to develop this new service, and we're trying to think of ways that we can make our service more sticky to our customers, that's a great time to say, okay, guys, what could we try here? Could we try, this service or this offering or this offering? I want you guys to be experimental. This is the time for you guys to play. And trying to highlight when it is and when it isn't, and making time for it to be experimental, I think is a good way to build that into your culture. So just being sure that you're cognitive or aware that you're telling people when and when not to have those kinds of behaviors, I think is a really good tip. It helps them, nudge them to do something they might not have thought to do or realize they could experiment.
And it's crazy, the things that happen just in being authentic around each other. It's not this grand thing. And one of the things I want to make it clear, at least from my perspective, and you guys correct me if you think I'm wrong, But Raina, I just want to be clear, like, I think leaders can just be themselves. And if they're an actual leader being authentic in front of other people, those individuals are going to see it just like my kids see that I'm being authentic with them, or I'm not. And they'll call me on it, you know? And I think there should be that type of atmosphere as well. I think there should be an atmosphere of like, hey, I'm the same. If I'm doing something that's not helping or helpful to the business, say something in an appropriate manner, right? You know, my dad worked for 4-star generals his whole career, and he tells me, you know, people are like, how do you talk to these generals? How do you talk to them? He's like, well, they're a human being. Yeah, you respect the title, you respect the person, just like I would anybody. There's appropriate ways and different forms to be able to have that type of communication, and it should be had. And I think if you can model that type of authenticity, if you can model curiosity in front of the people you're leading, well, I think it'll be the same as I'm seeing my kids. They'll start writing in the morning or saying, hey, you know, Dad, I'd like to try an egg sandwich. And I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Throwing out ideas, or even ideas that, you know, that may be wrong. Like, you know, I'm not a software engineer. I know a lot about building software systems, but I am not a software engineer. I don't have my hands in code. But, you know, when we're talking about things, I can say, why don't we do something like this? Or why isn't it like this? You know, clearly exposing, you know, some gaps in my understanding. You know, I want to fill those gaps. I want to understand those sorts of things. And so letting people explain that to me, they don't sit there and think, oh my God, this guy doesn't know his ass from his elbow. They think, oh, he actually kind of cares, wants to understand this. I can be a geek and talk to him about this, and he'll appreciate that, rather than like, oh, he's some muckety muck. I don't want to, like, you know, get into the details with him. You know, just but diving in and you know, asking questions and being there and being okay with the fact that you don't know things. Because, you know, I think some people get foisted into management, you know, hey, you're doing great, here's a team, we need you to do more. But other people, like, try to be leaders, and those who are trying, I think, need to realize that they don't need to be experts in that. They need to be focusing on how to lead and how to manage as well. And so it's not your job to know everything. It's not your job to be the expert in everything you're doing. It's your job to be, you know, there for your team and supporting your team.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit. Jamie, you mentioned talent growth is a top priority for you.
For sure.
How do you incorporate play and experimentation into employee development without it feeling frivolous?
Well, you know, I think, you know, despite what people might think, you know, software engineering is actually a very creative thing to do. You're actually literally creating something, but you know, there's a lot of elegance in finding or a lot of beauty in finding a really elegant solution to something. And so, you know, the act of what we're doing in my line of work is creative. We are building something, we're trying to solve some key challenge. So I think in and of itself, it is a creative endeavor. And, you know, I think that's true of a lot of what people do. There's a lot of, you know, value. People create value. That's what businesses are all about, is creating value. So how do you create value? Well, if you're if you drive a dump truck or a garbage truck, your value is keeping this neighborhood clean and having a place that you know, our streets are very clear and we don't have to live in stench. You know, that's a value, and then you can sort of see that. So helping people see the value of what they're trying to do and focusing on that a lot is a key part of it. As far as like how to have fun and to grow the talent without being cheesy, I think it's like just sort of savoring what you're doing a little bit and enjoying it and getting into it and goofing around a little bit, and not taking things too seriously. You know, when it comes to like getting what I need to get done, I'm very serious about. I take it very seriously. It's really important to me that my teams deliver what they say they're going to deliver when they're going to deliver it, and at a very high quality. Those are all things that are really important to me. But it doesn't mean that, you know, we always have to be serious in order to have a serious outcome. You know, we can fool around a little bit and make light of things. And, you know, so again, it's all back to trust and creating that openness. You know, and there are a lot of little things. Like, I have a lot of pictures up in my office. I got these little, 8-inch square image tiles, and I made like a grid behind my desk. And like people come in and they instantly like look at them and start asking questions about them or comment on them or something like that. It often like starts a conversation off on a non-specific, business-specific topic. And so allowing that, human relationship to grow is really a key part of that. And so as you're hiring people, you want to be authentic and you want to, answer their questions. And in an interview setting, you want to be able to say, what is it that you really like about this company? And, what would make it, what would make a great candidate at this company? Well, my company, you have to be someone who's, believes in tech meritocracy. That is, anybody can have a good idea. So that means if we're hiring a manager, you have to believe that your most junior employee can come up with an idea that would change the way you run this company. And that's a key part of the belief structure that you have to have. And so if you don't work that way, that's fine. Not everybody does. But this isn't the right place for you. And so helping people understand who you are as a company and being authentic about that also helps bring that through. And so on as result on interviews, I'm never too serious. I always try to be light and introduce some levity to the situation. It also helps open them up, and help them expose and share their self, which is what I need to know. Are you a person who's going to succeed in this company? And if you're all angsty and nervous, it's much harder for me to tease that out. So there's a jumble of thoughts, but.
I love it when leaders do that. I gotta say, my current manager is very similar to that. Man, I just love it. There seems like no point of pressure that gets him over the edge. Very calm, which personally I want to be a calm, confident leader. Pam and I, my wife, we're talking about how we want to be as parents. I want to be a calm, confident leader, but in a very similar way in the workplace. That needs to be similar too, And there's a calmness and a confidence when you don't think of yourself too seriously,
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be the loudest person in the room. One of my favorite scenes is in The Godfather, where they're in California. Michael Corleone's got his legs crossed, similar to this, but he's got a Dupioni silk gray suit on. That'd be another conversation. Would have been way too much to buy that suit. And when my wife spent like maybe $400 on her wedding dress. Yeah. So I'm glad I didn't do that. Let's just put it that way. But he's sitting there, and he is the one in control of the room, but he's not saying anything, And his brother's just running his mouth, loud. And that's the thing, like, you don't need to be the loudest person in the room. And sometimes my former manager actually taught me this. And he said, Josh, most times you don't even have to say anything. So, I don't know, I love it when you can open somebody up, and as a leader, you can express that confidence and instill that confidence then in the person you're leading, just by example. That's what I'm hearing from what you're saying.
Well, yeah, and I think, it makes it easier to recruit people and bring them in and to have that candor if you've created that environment for real in the office place. Like, you don't want to obviously lie about that. But,
right. Integrity there, yeah.
So if you start with creating, a culture and finding what's good about that culture. So one of the things that, CCRI did in the time where I was gone is they created a set of values that define them. And when I got back, I looked at those values and I was like, that like perfectly embodied the company. They were really, really on point. And they weren't generic. They weren't every company's sort of thing. They were very, very unique to what CCRI was. And I really liked that because as I was going out, I was to recruit people, I was starting to write these job descriptions, and I realized we had all these different job descriptions out there and they were kind of confusing. And I was like, well, I need to convey these values, because if you line up with these values, then there's a really good chance that you're going to work here and do well here. And so, like, I rewrote the whole job description from top to bottom to talk about, who we are, why you want to work for us versus, perhaps some of our competitors, and what kind of things are you going to be doing. And it's a lot less about like, oh, we need you to be, an expert in this version of Java, this, particular technology, and this particular technology. Yes. Because you can learn all that stuff.
You can learn
it's
that
much
stuff.
more focused on, how you work, how do you establish those things?
Man.
And so we're reworking our interview process now to how to capture that and to really drill into that. And fun little side project that I worked on over the weekend, I was thinking about how we're going to train people to do interviewing, because we'd never done that before. We just brought people in, and maybe they'd sit through a couple of interviews, and then they'd be an interview themselves. And some people are great at it, and some people are not so much. But when we started standardizing our interview, I was like, well, I need to give examples of what a good answer to this question and a bad answer to this question would be. And so I wrote down a whole bunch of them, and then I got on ChatGPT, got ChatGPT to come up with a whole bunch of like really good and really bad answers. And I was like, reading them, and I'm like, this is so obvious. Everybody's going to be able to like see through this. And I'm like, that's because I'm reading it. When you're in an interview, you're talking. And so then I went and spent a weekend coding, and I, figured out how to do text to voice. And so I got like all different accents and all different things, and I had all the answers answered in a different voice and a different persona. And so now I've got this body of like spoken answers that people can give you in an interview, and you have to evaluate them. So I'm trying to figure out how to make that like a learning exercise, but that's been
Was that your weekend project?
Yeah.
You're doing, oh, that's super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So
Man.
I was kind of geeking out about it.
Yeah.
And then I go in to talk to real programmers, and they're like, eh?
Like, don't judge me. Yeah. Man, like, I want to make a point. You guys so managers and leaders I see as very different, right?
Yeah.
So like managers are good at incentivizing. Like managers will have like, here's the bonus you're going to get or whatever here. Then, but like in our company, we have like our admin team, and they're kind of the managers, right? But the leaders like crop up, and they don't need to like incentivize. People follow them because they're out of respect. So like leaders are the people that, like, one of our guys has shown this amazing efficiency or proficiency in like taking care of like customer backups and data sets and stuff like that. Because of that, he's clearly like the leader when it comes to any question or concern with like data recovery, data backup. Everybody goes to this guy. Nobody said you're going to be the leader of this. He became the leader because out of respect. So I think too, like, it's neat how I love like your meritocracy thing. Like no one, it doesn't matter who they are, they can have an idea that can change. I think no matter who they are, they can be a leader is too. Like it should be like a thing. And I never thought of articulating it that way, but anyone that joins the company can just become a leader. Doesn't mean you're going to be a manager, right? Managers are going to help make sure the process is followed, make sure the incentivization is happening. But that doesn't mean the managers also may not be leaders. You know what I mean? So I think that's an important distinction when it comes to how to craft a company that can have trust. Because people think their managers are also leaders. That can be a disconnect, which doesn't make sense in their brain. And you say separate, no, they're not a leader.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and all too often we talk about the leadership, which is really another way of saying the executive team.
Yeah, a bunch of managers. Yeah.
Well, no, it's the executive team, right? So they may or may not be managing a lot of direct reports. They may have, multiple direct or indirect reports. But I do think that, leadership happens at all levels. And I read a book recently called Leaders Made Here, I think is what it was called. And the bluff is that you need to have a surplus of leaders, and you need to have them ready to roll. So if you scale your company, that you have leaders who can step up and take on, more significant roles when you need them. Mm-hmm. And so you need to have a bench of leaders, not just enough people to do it today, but enough people to do it tomorrow, or enough people to do it when you have a major crisis with one of your customers or something like that. And to push on one of the points you made, like managers have lots of incentives. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I think like the manager's job is to enable and to coordinate the activity. It's not necessarily to divine the right thing to do. That's what the leadership is trying to do, is figure out like how can we get there? What's the sort of strategy approach? Whereas I think management often doing given that, like how do we make all that happen, and how do I make you, Bryant, really, really successful at doing your thing, and how do I make you, Josh, enable you to do your thing really well, and how do I get you guys to coordinate so that all happens? And that takes, that's a lot of work, and people often don't like stop and think, oh, that is the management job. That is what management is. It's about enabling your team and focusing that way.
That's excellent. And That's an excellent point. And to clarify too, you need both leaders and managers, and they're
Yeah,
both hard
absolutely.
jobs. Like I'm not a great manager at all. I'm not. Like, what is it? What leaders inspire and managers? Well, yeah, they don't have to. But yeah, generally would like. I'm not a sucky manager, but I am a good leader because people around me feel inspired to work hard and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean that I'm giving them the tools to do it. Like, so I need people who are good managers to actually empower the team to get stuff done. Otherwise, they're like, people can be, I love what Bryant said, but I'm floundering. And so, yeah, I want to make sure I'm not disparaging that a manager is less than a leader. I'm saying they're different and are required.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Absolutely.
heart, the brain, the leg muscles, all required for a human to work.
Yeah. The managers are your structure that will set you free.
That's right. Managers like your structure that will set you free. Perfect. Bringing it back, baby.
I think that's cool. Man, guys, I could go on and on about that topic. I just feel like there's so much to be said about leaders who lead by example and multiply themselves. And I'll just put it like that. And similarly, I feel like everybody in the company is in sales. And I think there's some companies who took that approach. I mean, I feel like an engineer, even an engineer who's quote unquote not customer facing, can have some of the greatest power to be able to sell. What is it to sell? To clearly communicate the value of what you're doing. And anybody in a company should be able to do that. When you have everybody in a company, that means any customer who walks through your workplace, if you have it, or virtually meets with, anybody should be able to clearly communicate the value from, even just from their vantage point, but just communicating that in a way that's not pushing to take, but giving. And that's to me, this mindset of giving. If you can have the mindset of giving in sales as a leader, whatever, it's seen. I've seen it. I've seen when somebody stands up on a stage and captures you because their motivation is not to take, to look good, but to give of what they've been given. Which is what I see both of you doing today, right?
Oh, thanks.
What's in it for you other than giving of what you've been given?
Well, the fortune and glory you promised.
Fortune and glory.
That's right.
Man, it is fun to talk about these things. It's fun too, like, because I feel like, I mean, this is in a couple of days. On Sunday, it'll be 21 years I've had this company. On Sunday.
That's awesome.
And yeah, there's a lot of lessons that have come from a lot of failure. It feels good to like share things that feel like truths, right? It feels like it helps. It'll help if it can help somebody. It feels good to do that.
Well, and let's take a moment here. Like, you point that out. I was actually living with Bryant when he started this business.
That's right.
I was transitioning from Northern Virginia back to Charlottesville, and my home acquisition and lease didn't exactly line up. And so I lived during the week at Bryant's house, and he literally went out and bought a mailing list and started sending people letters saying that he could come help fix their computers. I mean, and that's how that business got started. And he would show up in a white shirt with a bow tie, very UVA, and he would help people fix their computers. And now, like, he's obviously not your door-to-door computer guy anymore. He's helping, companies, and he's got a really sophisticated model that allows company to basically not think about their IT. And so they basically come in and run everything. They monitor it all the time. And Bryant has figured out that the secret to his business is that they forget about him, the silence. And so it's gone from being sort of mom and pop or just pop, going out and carrying his bag out to running a company that serves, quite good-sized companies and, has just absolutely fanatical customers. So this is a long journey for Bryant, 21 years. It's not like he's stuck to the same path. He's experimented. He's tried all different things. Like every time we get together, it's like, oh, I'm trying this new thing. I'm going to do this. And then a few times I've been like, holy cow, are people really going to pay that? And then he comes back, a few months later saying, yeah, people loved it. It was great. And I was like, wow, that must be a real problem, a real pain point that he's been able to drill in on and understand and help them with.
Yeah.
And so his growth of that business is just always astonished me.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, Jamie has been around since the beginning. Very humble beginnings.
Yeah, well, and we played around. We tried to start a company together when he was doing his business, and I had some ideas about, some managed services, like, oh man, like so many people need Outlook but don't want an Outlook server, and then they were just beginning to come out with those managed services, and we tried that, and then I was like, wait a minute, I can't do 3 jobs. I had 2 others at the time.
And now we're totally doing that.
Yeah. So it was
Thanks
fun.
for the good idea, Jamie. Appreciate you.
Yeah, well,
That's awesome. Well, I can definitely see why it's been successful, Bryant. And to Jamie's point, I'm noticing in one conversation the qualities that's gotten you to this point. That's going to keep putting you up and to the right. So
Thanks, man.
maybe to think about it from a different angle, I'm hearing some things of how this has worked, but what pitfalls, Brian, have you seen when play is superficial? And how do you help organizations embed play authentically into core values? And Jamie, you could probably speak on that. But yeah, Brian, go ahead first.
When play is superficial. Everybody's had the experience where somebody is joking, but they're not joking.
Mm.
Or somebody is being indirect. I think, again, like you kind of shortcut it when you said it involves trust. Like any amount of superficiality means there's deception in some way. I'm not saying it's intended.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if there's deception, which breaks trust, which destroys play. Right? Like that's really it. I don't know why I can't think of the right word, but there's like aggressive, there's passive aggressive, and then there's just like direct communication. Like aggressive and passive aggressive are super poor ways to communicate. Right? They're super, super bad ways to communicate. Versus saying, hey, I saw this thing, this is not working, this didn't work. I want to figure out how to change it, let's talk about it. Direct. I remember I worked at the YMCA as one of my first jobs, and they had a policy where they didn't have like quarterly reviews or anything. They said, if ever you do something wrong or something that needs to be fixed, within 24 hours, we'll have a conversation about it. We'll address it within 24 hours. That way you don't have to ever guess. You never have to guess if you're okay with your manager, your superior. And if the superior doesn't talk to you about it within 24 hours, they may never bring it up, as if it didn't happen. It doesn't count. So it's on the manager to decide if it's important enough to bring up. I implemented that Seventh Wall immediately. I found it had so much value. So like when first people get here, they're like, am I doing okay? I was like, is anything good? We're gonna have a review. I was like, you will never have like a quarter review. We'll hang out and talk about like your life, what you want for your future, see if we can help you with that. But like, if everything's broken, you will hear from me like within like 5 minutes. If ever possible I can. And I've always run the company that way, and that also builds trust. No one ever wonders, is Bryant gonna come to me and say I've been messing up for the past 6 months? No, because he told me I messed up 2 days ago. And he did it kindly. It's like, hey man, this did not help, don't do that again. And I've had employees that usually like this was done wrong. Like, hey man, here's the way, if a client does this again, here's how you need to handle the situation. You don't not have drama. Here's what you say, here's how I handle it. You have any questions? No, I got it. I say, great. Then the same thing would happen again. I'm like, okay, clearly, like I did not communicate with you in a way that was helpful to you. So let's sit down. So we sit down, we have a big conversation. I have them repeat that. Here's how you fix, here's how you do it. Make sure they really got it. If it's a third time after that, then they're not gonna work out. They gotta go somewhere else. Because like, if it's confusing and they're saying, look, I know you've told me, I still don't get it, it's not making, that's totally different. So, okay, I get it. Maybe it's something really hard for you. It's out of your wheelhouse. That's fine. But to say, I got it, I will not let you down 3 times and then still fail, that's when it's not okay. Because now my trust is broken. And my trust is equally as important of them as their trust is of me.
Yeah.
So,
So true.
Yeah,
Goes both ways.
yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. It's like you want to hold people accountable for learning, not for not making mistakes.
Yes.
And you want to, make it okay for them to fail, and then figure out how to solve that and not make that mistake again. So really, it's accountability for learning, not accountability for perfection.
See, this is so I'm not a process, but it's not Jamie. I'll say all these words, and Jamie will capture it in in a sentence.
Yeah.
This is a value Jamie's had with our relationship for years. That's exactly right. I want people to make mistakes. That's how you learn. But yeah, to not learn when something is hurting other people is not okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we had stuff happen in one of my teams in the last couple of weeks, and I was, there's been some challenges we've had, and we're working through some rough spots with this customer and trying to improve. And the team scheduled a retrospective, and they put out this document that they were sort of a working document, and I started asking questions on the document and said, and then we had our normal meeting, and I was like, this isn't enough time. I think we do need to do a deep dive retrospective on this. And they went through, and it was very candid. They pulled snippets from chat that they had with the customer. They pulled things where they think they screwed up, and they shared all of that with me. And I asked really pointed questions. Like one of the questions I asked was, it looks like 2 of the 3 bugs that came up in this situation were things that we could have caught internally. Why didn't we? And that's a pretty pointed question, but it wasn't a loaded question.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, who do I fire?
It wasn't a blameful question.
It's how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? And so, I was honored that they came to me wanting to do this retrospective and feeling open. So I didn't even need to say it this time, but I usually, if I'm going into a meeting like this, I'll say, look, I'm not asking these questions to figure out who's at fault or who's at blame. I'm going in to see how we don't make this mistake the next time. So I usually am explicit about it just because I may have new people on my team. They may not feel comfortable. It's never fun to talk about something that didn't go well.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure that it's really focused on that. And so I just try to be explicit about it when I am. But certainly, even without being explicit, you can make it clear that you're really there to make them better and to help them succeed.
That's
So
well said,
good.
man. Yeah.
So good. Oh man, I want to keep going, but we all have other things happening. I know Jamie, you've got to get to some things today. Just want to recap a bit, before we wrap up. Some of the takeaways for me: trust is the foundation that allows play, creativity, and authentic connection to flourish. Pure play means embracing experimentation and failure, just like kids on a playground or bookings.com. Culture of rapid learning. Leaders who model and reward trust, curiosity, and joy help teams thrive and innovate. And I want to invite some of the listeners, what's one way you can build trust or introduce playful experimentation in your own team this week? I want you to share your thoughts on LinkedIn, direct message me. I'd love to hear from you. I really love what you said, to not learn. I think both of you kind of co-created this, but to not learn when you're hurting somebody else is not okay, right? Here's the thing, failure is necessary. How can we increase our rate of failure should be individually what we're thinking, but for the purpose of learning, for the purpose of building someone else up, for the purpose of creating something really unique in each one of the companies that we're in. And I think, man, if we can spend some time building that trust through play in our personal lives, in our lives at work, and those two don't become so different, right? And work isn't a dungeon, but a playground that we get to create in. That sounds like a company I want to be a part of. I feel like each one of us are blessed to have that. And my hope is that just continues to spread all around us. I think there's remarkable things being created right now.
Yeah, right.
And to your point and Bryant's point a moment ago, you don't have to be a manager to create that environment at your work. Anybody can be a leader, and you can be a leader or a cultural leader in your company and help bring these cultural changes to your company. And your opinion about that matters. And so, it's not, don't be a victim of a system, be part of the solution and feel empowered to do that. And, that's your job. It's everybody's job. Culture isn't just, I think companies do reflect the culture of their leaders, but I think that other people can help bring that out and amplify those signals. So,
Yeah, well said.
because, let's face it, like most people aren't the leaders, or most people aren't, the management or in executive leadership, but they still have a part to play in all of this.
Huge part.
I don't mean to say most people aren't leaders, because I think anybody can be a leader. I do believe that.
Yeah.
And it may even, that exercise may even prove to them too, it's time to go and leave this job.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
it could be, like either way, it's a good exercise.
Right.
You can't lose. Whether you're under the sword or over it, you're building harmony, baby. You're bringing it back.
That's it. That's
Building
it.
harmony.
Any closing remarks?
Oh, I thought I just did that.
Yeah, that was great. Anything further?
I mean, are you? You seem like you're. You seem like you're enjoying the play of doing this stuff with other people.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, and I'll just give just a closing remark on this. In order for us to learn, we have to, in many ways, put ourselves in scenarios where we're going to learn. And one of the things I'm reading about is putting myself in scenarios where I'm obligated to learn. So one of the things I loved is you said, "Hey, I'll meet with you in 3 months." Or a month from now or whatever. And I love that because I learned a lot from that. I learned that you protect your time. You have clear vision and goals that you're going after. You have a big responsibility as a CEO of, Seventh Wall. And the fact that you still were willing to make time, I thought that was remarkable. And so for me, I put myself in a scenario where, wow, I've now got a CEO and a senior leader of a company, who's really going to invest time. That means, wow, I want to show up even more. And in my week to week, right, my job, it requires me to talk to all levels of leadership, whether it be a CIO or a CTO. And my job is really to enable their teams based on what I'm hearing from them. Hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Here's the type of expertise that we need to bring to the table. And I put those teams together and allow them to have conversations like this, except about other things.
Cool.
And so this is aiding my ability to be able to do that. And so I think in many ways Switchboard was formed from a sheer reality of like, hey, I want to get better at what I'm doing. I want to constantly be growing. I want to record and document, right, the things I'm learning. And then I want to make that available to other people so that they can start doing that too, and everybody's in their own, point of their journey. And so, yeah, it's both and it's also merging the spheres for me, merging the spheres, and that makes it more playful to me, more fun to me, because I'm now becoming a student of my profession, and the thing I'm studying is not painful, it's not, to me it's starting to become fun. And I think when that happens, wow, I think our businesses do start growing. So anyways, yeah, thanks for asking that.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, to that end, Bryant, thank you so much. Jamie, thank you so much. Doubly, because you introduced me to Bryant. And thank you, Common House. It's been such a delight traveling here from Durham, North Carolina. The scenery was great, so I encourage you, if you haven't been, come to Alexandria. Charlottesville, sorry.
Alexandria's
What's my deal?
You want to try to do a take on that one?
Yeah, edit that, please.
Welcome to Charlottesville.
Yes, welcome to Charlottesville.
Thank you for driving up. It's been fun having these conversations, but it is more fun in person.
Yeah.
Always better in person. Yeah, it's good. You got a good vibe.
You look at people in the eyes, and that's what I want to continuously do. Each one of us are driving at a goal. Each one of us are, going towards something. I want to encourage myself, each one of us here, anybody out listening, if you're still listening, thank you. Really appreciate that. But if your eye is only on the money, and replace that with whatever you want, but if your eye is only on the money, you don't see the person in front of you. If you don't see the person in front of you, they don't, and you don't see them and they don't see you, trust is not built. And I guarantee you may make a sale, right? I'm in sales. You may make a sale today, but you do not have a customer. But if you can look at the person that you're talking to and you can really care about them and seek to give them something that's going to better what they're doing, I guarantee you will have customers for life. You will have partnerships that begin to want to do more for you. And here's my promise to you. If you will follow me on this journey of me trying to grow and learn by simply sharing with me what would help you do that better, I commit to you, my promise to you, is that I will continue to do these things. And I will continue to show up and engage. And I'll continue to put things in front of you that you tell me is going to be helpful to you. Thanks. That's Switchboard. I really hope you have a great day. Night, wherever you're at.
That's right.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Dude, you